A few weeks ago I released a video talking about how I was going to retire at 45 with a 9% drawdown from my £400,000 ISA. A stranger in the comments mentioned that I was going to be back at work in my 50s, and it made me think, so I ran all the numbers to see if he was right. So quick recap if you're new here. I'm 41, I've got just over £250,000 in my stocks and shares ISA. I'm hoping that grows to closer to or over 400,000 come my 45th birthday, which will enable me to retire with a 9% drawdown rate of £36,000 per year. Now, granted, that's a lot more than what most people recommend. The safe withdrawal limit is 4% or 3.5%, or it might be slightly more now. A lot of people are saying that can be a little bit more aggressive, but nowhere will you find 9%. And the reason I'm so confident on that 9% is because my ISA doesn't have to last forever. My ISA is just a fund that I'm going to use up until I'm 57 or 58 when I can draw on my private pension. So I'm quite happy if that pot goes down over that term, as long as I don't end up with zero. And then obviously I have to go back to work or whatever that might look like. So the danger for me is ending up with zero before my private pension I can draw down. And obviously that comes with risks. We don't know what age that private pension is going to be, 57, 58, 65 or whatever the government decide next. So that's a big risk. So I'm actually working towards a target that can move. The goalposts can move in terms of what that age is. But I can also move, which is why I've got a lot of confidence in this. So I've got the option to draw down money only when the market's good, to do some work if I need to. So there's various different things that I'm going to get into about that. But the comments really made me start to think a couple of weeks ago. And really that's what I want you guys to do, is kind of check my homework and make sure these numbers are viable, because other than my wife and I, there's not really anyone I can talk this through. And a lot of the comments so far have been super helpful and actually checked me and checked my workings out and my thought process. And this was one of them, saying that in all likelihood I would return to work in my 50s. So what I decided to do, with a little bit of help from Claude and AI, is run some models, the Monte Carlo approach, which some of you may be familiar with. But also it ran about 20,000 different models based on different stock returns and what that would look like. And I'm going to talk you through those now to show what the likelihood that my pot is going to survive until I'm able to retire at 57 or 58. So here's my numbers so you can check my homework, as it were. So the starting pot will be 400 grand. I'll be withdrawing £36,000 per year, which, like I said, is 9%. That will be inflation adjusted, so it comes at closer to 50 grand at the end of the model, so 13 years in if it's needed until my 58th birthday. That was something that somebody else pointed out. I was factoring in 12 years, not 13, and to be fair, it is more and more likely that I will be at earliest able to get my private pension at 58, so I have changed the model based on the comments, so thanks for that. I'll just put your name up there who commented that, that's really helpful. So the goalposts have already moved, and there's no guarantee they won't move again during that period between my ISA and my private pension becoming available. The markets I'm going to put my money into is 100% equities. It's an index fund. It's more than likely going to be the global all cap where it is today, and that may change. I do review that and look at it, but for now that's certainly what the plan is. I am modelling it on 5% returns, which I think is quite modest, but also takes out the inflation adjusted, so that 5% is the return that I'm looking at. Some people will say that's too much, some people will say it's not enough. You've got to pick a number and go with it, and I'm quite confident with that 5% and comfortable with it. The only risk of failure for me is that pot hits zero before my 58th birthday, or whatever age I'm allowed to draw down my pension. So that's where the numbers lie. And what I've done is run 20,000 different scenarios, different possible outcomes for my future, to see where that lands and how possible this is or not, and what the percentage chance of me being successful with this plan are. Here in the graphic, every grey line is a possible version of my life, taking into account all the numbers I've just talked you through. And my plan fails 46% of the time, which in truth is not much. My odds are not much better than a coin toss, which is scary. And I guess the stranger in the comments was 46% right. There is a strong possibility that I return to work in my 50s and this plan doesn't work out, which is a little bit scary. So it's made me start to think about things. I also looked at the plan if the markets don't return that 5% after inflation. I looked at 3%, and if it's 3%, the failure rate grows into the 60s, which again is quite sobering. And that is, a distinct possibility. We've had fantastic returns in the stock market over the last decade or more. I'm not expecting those to continue, and it could be that we get very modest returns, if anything at all. One thing that is guaranteed with the stock market is that nothing is guaranteed, but the biggest risk to the success of my plan is a big crash in year one. If we get a 2008 style crash in year one, that reduces the chances of success for me to 3%. So if everything crashes the first year I decide to draw down on this, then there's only a 3% chance that I will be successful, and 97% chance of failure, which again is quite scary. But there's things I can do about that. One thing, looking at the numbers, that actually hit me pretty hard was the median failure rate. So it doesn't typically end early. What tends to happen is I run short just before my pension is available. The average time for it to fail, when it did fail, is 2 years before. So when I'm 56 years old, the plan would fail. And to be fair, that might sound like, oh, well, you're not that far off. But for me, that's a nightmare, because I'm only 2 years out. When I'm 56, am I really going to be motivated to want to go back to work? If I do need to work and need to do things, I'd rather be doing that at the outset. So what that's told me is that I need to do more to make this plan more stable, and have more kind of cards up my sleeve to mitigate these risks, sequence of return risk and earning some money or not taking cash out when the market's down. So I'm going to set myself some rules. So rule one that I'm setting myself: if the market drops in that year, I reduce my withdrawal rate. So I will take no more than £30,000 in a year where the market is down. So the benefit of that is I'm not double hitting my pot. If the market goes down, that's obviously the pot being diminished anyway, and I'm not taking the 36,000, I'm taking 30. That's the maximum I will take out in a down year. I will try to take less. If I can get some work, if I'm still doing things, if I don't need as much money, I will look to take out less. So that's going to help significantly. And the second rule that I'm going to do, in the bad years, I'm going to try and earn some money, particularly in the early years. So in the first 5 years, I'm going to try and find a side hustle in which I can earn £1,000 a month. Now, this might be it. I doubt it. My YouTube certainly isn't blowing up, so I doubt I'm going to get £1,000 a month from this. But there's other things I can do. Somebody else in the comments asked me to talk about my side hustles and what ultimately led me to go self-employed, and that's definitely going to be a future video, because for me it's a really interesting one. And if I hadn't started my side hustles and things, I would never have become self-employed and never realised this is possible. And now I have done. It starts to open your eyes to all the different ways they are to earn money, rather than that classic 9 to 5. So that's definitely an option that I'm going to do. So if there's down years within the first 5 years of me retiring, I'm going to look to earn at least £12,000. Now, the truth is as well, I haven't decided I will definitely stop working. Come my 45th birthday, do I just pack up tools and stop entirely? I think the chances of that are increasingly less. But what this just gives me is freedom to do what I want. That's the big thing I'm pushing for here. At 45, I know I've got that safety net, that comfort zone, that should the worst come to worst, heaven forbid I'm unable to work through health, or something happens where I can't get a job, or the markets, whatever happens, there's so many different eventualities. We can all catastrophize on what that could be, but what this gives me is just that comfort and that safety blanket of knowing that I'm safe. But that also gives me some cards I can play, because I am safe and I have got that behind me. I think it actually is going to make me more inclined to take risk. So I was speaking to somebody recently, a friend of mine, about this, and we were talking about having a kind of baseline finance and then being able to swing for the fences, have a real go. Do I set up that business and try and earn way more money, or do I do that thing I really love and just go for it and haven't got to worry about paying the mortgage and making sure we can afford to put food on the table? And I think that's increasingly more where I'll get to, where I've got that point at 45 where I think, right, let's have a real go at something. What that is, I don't know, but hopefully I'll find something that lights my fire. So thanks again to the comments that you guys have given me, because those comments about me running out of money in my 50s really made me think, and it's actually made me change my plan in 3 ways. One is I am going to get more of a cash buffer. I've not mentioned that yet, but just so I've got some more cash in the bank. And if that means I have to wait till 46 or 47 or whatever that is, then I'm cool with that, because the truth is I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now, being self-employed. So I'm not as desperate to get out as what I was. So that's the first thing, a bigger cash buffer. The second thing I've touched on with you guys already, but it's that kind of protocol for bad years. If we have a 2008 early on in my drawdown, I've got some things I can do that mitigate that risk. this, because that 97% failure rate really rings true to me, and I'm going to make sure that I don't fall into that bucket. And then the third thing I'm going to do is 45 hasn't become set in stone anymore. What I'm doing is, yes, I'm still aiming to 45. I still think you need a goal, but it's more making sure I have the money in place. You know, it's actually possible that I don't get to 400,000 at 45. That's, you know, more than possible. In fact, I'm still contributing, but I'm also very reliant on market conditions and getting good returns over the next, what's 3.5 years now, pretty much. So it's not guaranteed that I'll get there. I guess this is exactly what this channel is, really. It's my thought process and this journey along the way. I'm not some guru telling you how to do things. I'm simply sharing what I'm doing, what my thought process is, but also being challenged along the way, which is exactly what I want. You know, these comments and people mentioning things are really making me think and fact check everything, and that's perfect for me, because I've never done this before. I speak to very little people about this, probably AI more than what I should, but we all know what AI can be like for hallucinations and different things. So to get some comments from actual humans, and some of the people who've commented on my videos have been absolutely superb. Like, the comments have been so detailed, you know, something you'd probably pay a lot of money from financial advisors. So thanks to anyone who's commented on my videos.